All right, let's go ahead and get started. Well, you guys are obviously the brave and intrepid that made it to campus today, and I really appreciate you making the effort because obviously our guest lecturer was able to make it in yesterday from El Paso, and so obviously we were going to be going forward with this event today, and so we wanted to at least have a decent crowd for him. So I really appreciate you all making the effort to be here, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. Our guest lecturer today is Shelby McCue. First, let me introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm Bill Keffer, and I teach the oil and gas courses here at the law school. And as you know, we started this energy law lecture series last fall and had a really great lineup of folks to come speak to us. Russell Gold with the Wall Street Journal, Carlos Ortiz with the Mexican government, Department of Energy down there in Mexico City, and then we finished up with Corey Goulet with TransCanada on the Keystone Pipeline. And we have just as great a series of speakers this spring as part of the series, and we're starting off that series for this semester with Shelby McCue. Shelby is not only just has a great resume and a great track record working in the private sector with ExxonMobil, but he's also an alum of this law school. And so it makes it even more special for us to be able to have someone come speak to us in this lecture series that actually traveled these same hallways as you all, and be able to share with you his experience and sort of how he got started once he had his JD and then became as successful as he has in the private sector. I'll just give you a quick couple of fun facts about him. He grew up in El Paso. He got his undergrad at the University of Texas at El Paso. Got his law school degree, JD here at Tech Law School in 1978, and proceeded to go into practice. Went in-house with El Paso Natural Gas back in his hometown, and then took a job with Exxon and was with Exxon for the balance of his career, wrapping up his career by doing some interesting work, which you're going to hear about today, in New Guinea in the South Pacific. That map up there is not just to make you feel warm. That's actually going to be relevant to his speech today. So he'll speak to us for the next 30, 35, 40 minutes and then take some questions from you guys. But this is going to be an interesting opportunity for you to hear about something that's a little unorthodox in terms of what you might be able to do with your JD once you leave this law school. So please help me thank and welcome Shelby McCue.
Thank you, Bill, for that introduction. I must say that I am very honored to be back here today. So many wonderful memories of my time at this law school. While I was here, I was privileged to be able to study oil and gas under Richard Hemingway, who's an esteemed Hornbook professor, and then I also got to study property law under Bruce Kramer, who I think recently retired, maybe a few years ago. And Professor Kramer was very successful in having me understand covenants running with the land, but I never did quite understand the intricacies of the profit of prawn, so maybe y'all know a little bit more about that, but I never did catch up on that. But despite that failing, I struggled on into the world of hydrocarbons and have spent a lifetime in oil and gas transactions, and as Bill told you, ended up in Papua New Guinea helping ExxonMobil put in the Papua New Guinea LNG project. What I wanted to do today was share with you some takeaways, at least two things I want you to know. One, there's a field of expertise called socioeconomics that relates to oil and gas exploration, development, and production. That's the first thing. And the second thing I want you to take away is that there are areas of expertise where your talent as a lawyer will be very valuable to people who are in the business of hydrocarbon resources and hydrocarbon extraction. Having said that, I need to get you situated in the part of the world that we're talking about. And let me find out, has anyone here been to Papua New Guinea? My wife has been there. Sam and I lived in Port Moresby, which you can see is kind of down here in the corner It is the capital of Port Moresby. Papua New Guinea occupies the eastern half of the New Guinea island, which is north of Australia. It is a very interesting country to live in. The monetary unit is called the kina. That is named after a kina shell, and back in the day when it was a colonial, when it was subject to colonial powers, kina were the units of monetary value. The language in the lingua franca, I guess it's called, is Tok Pisin or Tok Pidgin. The thing about it is there are 836 indigenous languages in this country. So how do you develop a country when there are so many different languages? It's very difficult. So it makes it very, very interesting to try to communicate and to have the people that you're dealing with understand what it is that you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it. As an economic summary, the GDP of Papua New Guinea is about 20 billion. The per capita income is about $2,900. It's rich in natural resources: gold, copper, silver, natural gas, timber, oil, and fisheries. It does have some exports. Mainly coffee is one of the great ones. It's a member of the Commonwealth of Nations, and they love the Queen. I can tell you that they really are fond of the Queen and the Prince, and they're very proud of that heritage. Now, if you look at the map, what you'll see is, and this is everything that's in Papua New Guinea. It includes major roads, other roads, rivers, major cities. And what you see, or what you don't see, are roads. If I want to go someplace in Papua New Guinea, I'll catch a plane from Port Moresby, and I might have to fly to Tari, which is right up over here in the highlands. Tari, right here. Goroka, Mount Hagen. In this area, Mount Hagen is especially interesting. If you are interested, you can go on the internet and check out the video of Michael Leahy, First Contact. You've got people living in Papua New Guinea who weren't even discovered until 1930. So when you think of that, it's such a unique place to visit and certainly to do business. I need to talk to you for just a minute about culture. And the main cultural characteristic that you need to understand is one talk. That's Tok Pisin for one talk. With 860 different kinds of indigenous languages, the people who speak the same language are the one talks, one talk. And what that means is if I am in your one talk system, we are bound by that culture and that tribal and clan tradition. And it is the glue that holds the country together, but at the same time, it's one of the things that is an impediment to its growth and development. And the reason being is that if you are my Wantoks and you need something from me, you can come and ask, and I feel compelled to share with you. And so you see some strange things because of this. If you're the ambulance driver in Papua New Guinea, you'll see the ambulance at the mall because the ambulance driver needed to take his sister-in-law's grandmother shopping. No one knows how to say no when a Wantok asks you for something. So what it creates is this great leveling. If you've got something, I can come to you and ask. So how do you distinguish yourself? How is it that you can get ahead and make your your vision of reality. It makes it very, very difficult. There's some troubling parts of Papua New Guinea. Violence against women is rampant. People say that there are three things that are important in Papua New Guinea, and it's land and women and pigs. Unusual place to live. So this is where we decided, ExxonMobil decided to put in an LNG prospect. And let me show you what that prospect looks like. There it is. So that is the project that I'm talking about. And you'll see up at the top, you've got the well pads. You can click on it. And that's where the production is going to be. It comes from Juha and Gori and Agogo. So that production, that was going to be a stranded gas field. Hydrocarbon extraction is dependent on technology. Without LNG technology, that hydrocarbon stays right there in the ground. So we're going to take the gas production from those well pads. We're going to send it down. You can see the Hyde's gas conditioning plant right here. We'll treat that gas. We're going to, gas has got all these elements in it. It's got water in it. It's got other impurities in it. We're going to strip out those liquids. We're going to send that down a liquid pipeline owned by Oil Search. We're going to take that natural gas, and it's going to go into an onshore pipeline, and it's going to come all the way down to right here, and that's down. You can see Kopi. That's the Kopi base, and that pipeline is going to come down right there and empty into the Gulf of Papua. And I want you to keep your eye on that, because we're going to have an experience with the Kakori people on the Kakori River and the Omati River from right there. From landfall, we're going to have an offshore pipeline that will come through, and it will end up here at this LNG plant. Now, LNG works, the technology works, because you can take that gas and you can freeze it. I believe it's 160 degrees below Celsius. Very, 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 very cold, and we can turn that gas into a liquid. The liquid can then go on a jetty to LNG tankers, and from there it goes into the Asian markets. The great thing about LNG, there's no spot market for LNG like we're used to, the Henry Hub or whatever. The LNG price was tied in a kind of parity with the price of oil. So when oil was $100 a barrel, LNG looked very, very profitable. As the price of oil comes down, it impacts not just oil production itself, but it also impacts the price of LNG. One other thing, very interesting, this is the Como Airfield. It's 3.2 kilometers long, and that airfield, I spent better part of a year. That site was the place of a great clan battle, and of all the places that you wanted to put an airfield, that wasn't it, because I had clans who had to leave and came back, and now they were absentee landowners, and so when I needed to pay people, I had all kinds of disputes. There were about 14 clans that owned parts of this airfield. The socioeconomics of an airfield are kind of interesting. If back over on this side of the airfield is where the school was for the kids. I have people living on this side of the airfield. Now I have built an airfield and I can't get those kids to school. That's socioeconomics, isn't it? How am I going to get those kids to school? Can ExxonMobil build an airfield and I can't have those kids get to school? So we have to build a road. I've got to shuttle those kids around. I've got to get those kids to school. When you do something like this too, what are you doing? You're changing water drainage, water patterns. What else happens? People are working. There's national content requirements that you need to have people who are local come in and work. National content causes all kinds of other problems. Project-induced in-migration. I've got people way up in the northern part of Papua New Guinea who are now coming down. They want jobs. When I have jobs, what do? I have young men. When I have young men with high testosterone, what do I have? I've got sex workers. I've got alcohol. I've got drugs. That all falls back to ExxonMobil and socioeconomics. So, if I say the words Equator Principles, has anyone heard that word before? Well, that's great. You're going to learn something today about Equator Principles in socioeconomics and how it applies to hydrocarbon extraction. When we were building that project, the LNG project, my main concern going in was, have we got the systems in place to follow the hydrocarbon laws of Papua New Guinea? Whatever their regulatory regimes might be, whatever their socioeconomic regimes may be, whatever their requirements are for me to pay compensation to people, can I do that? I can do that. I've got those systems in place with ExxonMobil. But what we have here are partners. ExxonMobil owned about 41, 42%. Santos, an Australian company, owned about 27%. Oil Search owned about 17%. Nippon, the Japanese, owned some. The Papua New Guinea Oil and Gas Corporation, the country itself has an oil company. They had part of it. Mineral Resources Development Company, which is a landowner corporation that represents landowners. They were in that. This thing cost, the project cost about 19 to $20 billion. ExxonMobil could fund our part. Our partners can't. Where do they go? They go to the banks. And that's where you have the Equator Principles come into effect. And let me just talk about that. There's what's called a social risk management evolution. It started in 1998 with the International Finance Corporation. The International Finance Corporation was loaning money, but they weren't happy with what was happening, the outcomes that they saw from a socioeconomic standpoint. They were not getting those intended outcomes. So what they said is, we've got to establish some principles. If we're going to loan money, then those people who are taking this money have got to be responsible. And it comes within the context of what's called a social license to operate. So in 1998 it started. Then in 2002 you have about 10 international banks convened in London, and they said, look, we are making investments around the world. What are we doing to make sure that we mitigate risk? So you can see on the board there, the Equator Principles is a risk management framework adopted by financial institutions for determining, assessing, and managing environmental and social risk in projects, and is primarily intended to provide a minimum standard for due diligence to support responsible risk decision making. The Equator Principles are the gold standard for socioeconomic implementation. Now, so in 2002, you have these banks meeting. They say, we've got to get together and figure something out. What they discovered was the IFC had already done something similar to that. So what they said is, look, you've already done this. We'll bring them on board and we'll incorporate them. In 2003, they met in Washington, D.C., and the Equator Principles were launched. In 2006, the IFC released their policy and performance standards, and from there in 2010, the Equator Principle Association was instituted. So, what happens on the LNG project when our partners in the joint venture needed money? They go to the World Bank, they go to the International Finance Corporation, they go to those lenders. The lenders say, of course we'd be glad to lend you this money, but the condition of the loan itself is that you comply with the Equator Principles. And on the Equator Principles, let me just give you some of the performance standards. Social and environmental assessment and management systems, labor and working conditions, pollution prevention and abatement, community health, safety and security, land acquisition, and involuntary resettlement. That's where I lived. Biodiversity conservation and sustainable natural resource management, indigenous peoples, that's where I was, dealing with the clans and all that was going on with those folks. Cultural heritage, how do I respect their heritage, their traditions? And so that's what we had. Was what we were having to do over there, is to make sure that we were complying with those performance standards, especially those standards revolving in my line around involuntary resettlement and indigenous peoples and cultural heritage. Now, if I can talk a little bit about land tenure. Y'all have taken property law, and so you understand the concepts of fee simple, life estates, remainders, contingent remainders, springing remainders, whatever it is that we're talking about that goes back to Runnymede in 1066. Land tenure in P&G is completely different. It's use rights. So customary land covers most of the usable land in P&G. 97% of the land in Papua New Guinea is what's called customary land. And by that, this is what I mean. You see that the floor of this auditorium would be owned by clans. I've got to go through a process of demarcation to understand who those clans are, talk to those clans, see if we can get those boundaries. But this is the thing. Everything that's on this desk in front of you, all the bottles, all the paper, everything else, that is owned by individuals. So now what it is I'm asking as far as compensation is, I have got to pay you for your garden, for your house, and I'm going to move you. And I'm going to move your wives. I'm going to have to ask you to move your garden. And then now I've got an obligation to you to make sure that when I ask you to do that, I'm moving you in a way that is sustainable for you. So I have a project of livelihood restoration. I've got agricultural experts that are going to come in and help you grow those potatoes a little bit better. While you're moving, I'm providing rations for you. I'm helping you build a house. And now one other thing I need to point out is I want you to hear the words free, prior, and informed consent. It used to be with indigenous people that you just had to have meaningful relationship and communication. The new standard from 2012 is free, prior, and informed consent. How do I get that? How do I get these agreements? You know, one of the great attributes of Western civilization and contract law is if you and I enter a contract, I've got certainty. I can run my business based on that. In Papua New Guinea, how do I get that kind of certainty? You can't, really. In Papua New Guinea culture, it's always, let's just keep talking. The contract is good as long as both parties are happy. To make certain that people understood the resettlement package I was giving, the company hired an environmental law center. So I had a bank of lawyers that would go with us, and I wanted to make sure that they understood, because I have got to prove free, prior, and informed consent. How do I get free, prior, and informed consent? I get them to take down their house. I get them to plow up their garden. If they won't do it, I'm not certain that I have free, prior, and informed consent. Now, how does all this matter? How do all these performance standards matter? They matter because the lenders say, we don't believe that you're doing this. We're going to have an independent auditor come in quarterly, do an audit, and tell us how you're performing. So it gets very expensive. That's part of your front-end cost, but I've got to do that. And so we'll go through. What are you doing on the biodiversity? Are you making sure that those vehicles are washed? Are you bringing in some kind of plant from the northern part of Papua New Guinea into the southern part of Papua New Guinea that wasn't there before? What are you doing on that? What are you doing with these people? Are you going back and checking and making sure that their livelihoods are sustainable? Do they have a better life now than they did before? What are you doing about the people that were vulnerable in this village? What are you doing about those women? What are you doing about those children? What are you doing about the health? What are you doing about the tuberculosis? What are you doing about the superstition that people have still that tuberculosis is caused by witchcraft? What are you doing about the women who were burned because they were thought to be a witch? What are you doing about that? What are you doing about the AIDS problem that you've got now because of sex workers coming in? What are you doing about the fact that you have now given all of this money to people that have no life skill training on what to do with it? It's socioeconomics, completely apart from what we think. In the Keystone Pipeline, which I suppose that y'all heard a lecture last semester or whatever, people would be upset because the pipeline is going across their land. In Papua New Guinea, if these folks saw a surveyor, we would take a videotape the land, there's nothing there. Come back the next morning, there's a village. They want to get paid. They want the money. Who am I to quibble? It's their land. So, you try to send the surveyors in at dark. They know that it's there. So now I've got a deal. All of a sudden there's a garden. I think I bought the same coffee plant 15 times. It's all right. It's their land. But what you try to do on involuntary resettlement is take the video and eventually get a cutoff date so that you say, look, after this point, I'm not going to pay compensation anymore. But then you would have squatters and you still have to deal with them. So it's always something. Now what I want to do is take you, let's see if I can do this. Now, we're talking about cultural heritage, and I want to get this finished in time where maybe you can ask some questions. Let me set this up. This is down on landfall. We're coming down the Amati River to an island called Guare. So let me set this up, what you're going to see. These folks go back hundreds and hundreds of years. Their religion was based on warfare and headhunting and cannibalism. Well, the story is anecdotal that Australian missionaries went in to try to convert these people to Christianity. They were killed, and the anecdotal story is that they were eaten. And so you'll see these people, but that's all anecdotal. But what we do know is that the Australians sent an expedition in to punish the Karawa tribe. As a result, there was a battle. I now have Karawa warriors who were killed in the river. So now what do I do with all those other problems I talked to you about? What do I do about the dead spirit, the spirits of the dead warriors in the river? let's see. It takes lots of pigs to appease the dead spirits, but let's just take a look here. Now that's me, kind of seeing it coming through. I look a little bit jaundiced, but I haven't seen a men's restaurant in like 9 hours. So while you're watching that, I'm going to keep talking. One of the great things that we did, very proud of the corporation. Look at me, I don't look happy. I'm not that happy. Is that we developed a community development support plan. Let me see if I can find another. I think this is one where they're going to dance us into the longhouse. This is where the long ways from Kansas came in. They're lovely people, absolutely lovely, wonderful people. They were very gracious to us. There's their native dancing. Anyway, we have a community development support plan. The community development support plan goes to two things. One is it goes to their culture, and the other thing that it goes to is indigenous people and showing them respect. This had to do with cultural heritage here. But on a community development support plan, there are 3 different components of a community support plan. One will be local economic development. Then there will be strength and social resilience. And the last one will be community capacity building. Uh-oh. Let's see, where is it? The things you get to do as a Texas Tech lawyer. Just wonderful people. Okay, local economic development, social resilience, and community capacity. When I have all of this going on in this project, we ask ourselves in socioeconomics, is there anything I can do? Can I take a survey of businesses? Do you have an idea for it? Do you have an entrepreneurial idea? One of the great ideas that came up was, you saw the Hides, the LNG plant that was down about 20 miles from Fort Moresby. I had 10,000 men working in that plant, building that plant. They're all over the world. Men have got to eat. The idea was, I'll start an egg business. Exxon said, well, you just knocked yourself up, big boy. So we tried this egg business, had hens come in from New Zealand that were immunized against salmonella. And the idea was that we would have the vulnerable people of the village do this, that is the women and children. The men would go off to the plant and work. I've got 10,000 men eating 3 eggs a morning, 30,000 eggs a day. I'm going to make these people the next Tyson industry. It's going to be great. The problem was we kept running into some regulatory hurdles. We never got that done. But that's the kind of idea you have. Have you got an idea? Local economic development. What can you do? We tried to help them with fisheries because they were overfishing the reefs. Worked with the University of Papua New Guinea in the fishery department. Is there some way I can get these folks off of the reef and further out so they don't overfish the reefs? things like that. Now on social resilience, let me talk about that. One of the things that we did was we tried to work with village courts. We partnered with the government of Papua New Guinea, and if we can bring that rule of law in and strengthen the communities, and so that people don't have to revert to violence to solve their problems. There was no funding for village courts. We did some funding in that way. Now let me say one other word that you're going to have to know, and that's Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Have y'all heard of that? Excuse me. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act? Okay. So now you've heard Equator Principles, Free, Prior, and Informed Consent. Now you've heard Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Anytime you have got a corporation where largesse is moving from the corporation to some kind of government entity or government official, what your responsibility is going to be is to make sure that when I'm moving this largesse to fund courts or do whatever it is I need to do, that I'm in compliance with the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. The Justice Department is very serious about it. We're not going to do business around the world in any other way than that is fair and transparent. Now then, so that's social resilience. The other thing is community capacity building. And what we mean by that is, can we develop organizations from the ground up? Because the whole idea is we want you to participate in your community. We want you to look at what's happening, look at your reality, and effectuate that change that you want. So if we can get organizations together through the church, or like we have in the United States, you've got Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Lions Club, Masons, all those things, libraries, all those things that create a community capacity for them to decide what it is that they want in their country. What is their vision? What is it we're trying to do? so that we are good partners and good neighbors with them, but they're the ones that decide what's best for you. How do we mitigate against that problem that you see? What precaution do you want us to take before we put in that pipeline? What is it that you want, and how can we work together to see that that happens? I've just about run out of time. I want to take some questions. What this boils down to is the need to act justly, to love mercy, and then to walk humbly with your God. And I'm very proud that ExxonMobil, we strive to be a good neighbor. I've retired from the company, by the way. I play golf now. But we strive to be a good neighbor in whatever community we're in. One of the things that you can see, if you'd like, is the IESC, the Independent Environmental Social Economic Corporation. Quarterly, they will put their review, their audit online. So you want to know how ExxonMobil did with biodiversity? How did we do with involuntary resettlement? How did we do with labor working conditions? How do we do with health? It's all there for you to see. And what that creates then is transparency. The other thing, let me give you one other word, NGO. What's an NGO? Good. It's a non-governmental organization. So having this audit, NGOs get to see it. So now I've got the opportunity to partner up with an NGO. What does that NGO see as a possibility to help? What resources do they have? Give me some ideas. What can we do? So at the end of the day, it's not just about hydrocarbon extraction. It's about improving the lives of people, having the benefits of this project circulate down through people, through education, health, their own vision, their ability to take control of their own lives, life skills, What do they do with money? I had bankers come in and talk to people. Look, ExxonMobil's giving you some money. I have bankers come in. Let's open up some bank accounts. Everybody's got a cell phone. So these people teaching them how to bank on the cell phone. It's right there. All of these things. At the end of the day, everyone benefits. And we provide long-term employment, hopefully. We train all these folks to do these operators, national content. It's all very important. That's about all I've got to say in the time that I've got. I could spend hours on each one of these, but I don't have any time. But if anybody has a question, I'll try to answer it.
Anybody want to ask a question? We got about 5 minutes left. One in the back.
How did you prepare to go to such a different culture than your background in international business, or how did you get into that?
I did a lot of international oil and gas transactions, and through the company I learned that they needed someone to go over there because there was you've got to have the right personnel in place to effectuate this kind of thing. And I thought that I could do it because I enjoy people and experiences. And my wife, who knows no fear, said, "Let's go." So she said, "Let's go." And I said, "All right, well, let's do it." But it took a lot for me to get over, the violence. We would have to be driven through the country. You can't just drive off yourself. You'll be hijacking, and like we're talking about, the violence against women. But to answer your question, if you can be flexible, learn technology, read. Now you know about Equator Principles. If you want to be a socioeconomic specialist, learn. There's so many things, so many areas of the law that you can apply yourself in that will give you a wonderful career. But to answer your question, nothing specific other than just a willingness to listen, to learn, to be open, to be non-judgmental. In Papua New Guinea, negotiation is kind of a contact sport in the sense that they love to start yelling. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, you never say maybe. Maybe means yes. And it takes a lot of patience because, I've been to negotiating schools all over the United States, including Harvard. I've seen it all. And we try to be transparent and open in negotiating with the Papua New Guinea people and the Hoolies. The agenda unfolds as they talk. And everyone gets a chance to talk. Everyone. So I'm sitting in some village area for 2.5, 3 hours listening to people talk, and we're not done until everyone has their say. And the agenda, you have to listen. The agenda will kind of unfold. So, for example, if I'm dealing with a clan that says, yeah, like at the airport that I was telling you about, this clan wasn't so much interested in the money as they were interested in an economic opportunity. They wanted me, instead of giving them money, give them a truck. And then with the truck, they can do business with the company. Very interesting. But it doesn't unfold as quickly as you think. So you've got to listen, watch the agenda unfold, and take it from there, and then be patient.
Any other questions?
So you talked a lot about
Oh, gosh, that's such a good question. The people that we will resettle involuntarily, we will follow them for 6 years. And that's why we have agricultural experts that come in. And so we see, well, how's the family doing? What have you done with that money? What kind of life skill have we got? And so the idea is there is accountability. We cannot just move you off and forget about you. We actually follow you for that period of time to make sure that you're doing okay. And if you're not doing okay, what is it that I can learn from that so that we can do it better? So yes, I mean, and again, it comes with the idea is we are there for a long-term, sustainable relationship. We want you to have a better life, not just as good, but a better life than the one that you had before we came.
I think a follow-up answer on the enforcement question is that if things started going south, they probably brought up that Australian missionary story, didn't they? That's about all the time we've got. Please help me thank and just we appreciate so much you making the effort to be out here in the bad weather. But thank Shelby McCue for coming and spending time with us today. We've got a lovely parting gift for you from the law school for coming, and for those of you in my Oil and Gas 2 and Oil and Gas 1 courses, as you know, Shelby will be visiting with us. If any of y'all have time and want to come to either one of our classes from 1 to 2 o'clock or 4 to 5 o'clock, feel free to do it because he'll be answering more questions. Our next lecture in this series will actually be next Monday, March 2nd. And it'll be Donna Nelson, who's the current chairman of the PUC down in Austin, another Tech Law School alum, as a matter of fact. So thanks for coming today, and we'll see you next Monday.
Very good. Well, I enjoyed that.
Nice job.
Oh, I enjoyed that so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was running out of time.
Go ahead and stop like that.
Oh,